Hare Krishna, we are here in San Diego. Today is the Disappearance Day of Haridas Thakura. And we have devotees here. I'll introduce you to the devotees. Here is Hare Kripa from Mexico.
Hare Krishna.
Taruni from Israel. And Sisita Presta from Brazil. Panchali from Chile. Markandeya from here, originally from Argentina. He's our Krishna West leader in Tijuana. Krishna Gana from Australia. Maharshi from Mexico. Oh, and Ikshwaku. Whoops, do you want to end this live video? What happened? No, I don't want to end this live video, actually. And this is Ikshwaku from Mexico.
Hare Krishna.
De León y El León. So today is the Disappearance Day of Haridas Thakura. And Haridas Thakura is very important in our tradition for several reasons. First, he is you could say almost a unique example in the personal pastimes of Lord Chaitanya, of someone coming to Lord Chaitanya's movement from an entirely different religion. Of course, he was a Muslim. As we know, among Lord Chaitanya's followers, who, just to use that term, were somewhere inside the Hindu universe, we know that Lord Chaitanya's followers came from many backgrounds. Some of them were, you could say, Orthodox Brahmanas. Some of them were from other castes. Some were Sanskrit scholars. Some were very simple. Some had been in, for example, the Madhva Sampradaya. That was later, of course, Baladev Vidyabhushan. And so they came from many different backgrounds. Some had been impersonalists, like Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. So they came, Hinduism, using the term roughly, just to mean everybody's doing all that stuff in India based on Vedic literature. It's very diverse. There are many, many different. For one reason, it's very diverse. The simple reason that, unlike other parts of the world, in India, you didn't get killed if you didn't practice religion exactly the way your neighbor did. If you look at let's say, the relative uniformity of, let's say, Christianity or Islam in different, of course, Islam is also diverse, but in different parts of the world. For example, in India, Sufis and other places in the world, the Sufis were kind of like the Bhakti yogis of Islam, were persecuted. They were killed for not embodying someone else's idea of what it meant to be Muslim. And so in India, because generally people didn't kill other people because they had a different take on religion. It's amazing that you have Buddhism spread, Buddhism, which just openly said that the Vedas are not sacred texts. They just openly defied the holy books, the Bibles of India, and there were no wars. They just debated. And so if you look at the spread of Buddhism, the spread of Jainism, which back then was actually as popular in India as Buddhism, it used to be a very big religion. But if you look at that, and then gradually how they became overtaken again by the Vedic traditions, how Vaishnavism just overtook it until Buddha became accepted as simply an avatar of Vishnu. And so if you look at all this history, the rising and the decline of various religions, or competition, very like fiery debates going on. There was time, you had Shankara promoting impersonalism. You had the Mimamsas, the Karma Mimamsas were very powerful at one point. They had a lot of influence. You had the Buddhists, you had the Vaishnavas, and they were all debating, but they weren't killing each other. So the result of that is, when people actually have a lot more freedom of religion, you get a lot more diversity. And so it's interesting, you get this tremendous diversity in Hinduism for the simple reason they had the freedom to be diverse. And so when Lord Chaitanya came, and he was, during Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, he attracted people from the Hindu community, you could say from many, many different backgrounds, different varnas and just different traditions in different parts of the country. But Haridas Thakura was a Muslim in a society ruled by Muslims, in which to this day, they take opinion polls in places like Egypt or Saudi Arabia, different countries, Pakistan, where over 90% of the people in these countries believe that if someone is a Muslim and takes another religion, they should be killed. So there are countries in the world today where 90% of the people still believe this. And so you can just imagine 500 years ago how conservative things were. And so Haridas Thakura took to Krishna consciousness not in the sense of converting to another religion, but in the sense of discovering God. It was the goal of all serious religion. And of course, they tried to kill him for it. And there's that famous, and so Haridas Thakura is very important as an example, the non-sectarian nature, the universal nature of Krishna consciousness. He was also an extraordinarily advanced soul. And sometimes we hear he's Prahlad Maharaj, perhaps because Prahlad Maharaj tolerated without really any disturbance all the persecutions of his father, and Haridas Thakura was also violently persecuted, but it didn't really bother him. And so there's that obvious comparison. Sometimes he's said to be Lord Brahma for reasons I have not yet learned. Anyway, Haridas Thakura, he not only was he extraordinarily tolerant, superhumanly tolerant. He was beaten in, 20 marketplaces? I forget the number. 22. And one beating, that was meant to be an execution. That was like being executed, like being hung 22 times or something. Because just being beaten in one marketplace was essentially lethal. And so 22, it's like going before a firing squad 22 times and you're still having a good day. So Haridas Thakura was obviously an extraordinary saint. He had incredible powers, which not that he was a yogi that was seeking powers. He was actually seeking nothing but the holy name of Krishna. He just had these powers. He was just powerful. He wasn't someone who sought them. He just was powerful. And so they finally gave up. And then Haridas Thakura, so compassionate, after being executed 22 times and surviving, his only concern was maybe these executioners will get in trouble. I don't want them to suffer because of me. They're supposed to kill me, so I will, I'll play my part. Okay, you killed me. And then he just kind of fell into the river as if he were dead, because that way it looked like he was dead, but he could travel to some other place and come back to life far away, which is what he did. So, Haridas Thakura, these are extraordinary pastimes. Who can imitate these pastimes? They're completely superhuman. And then he showed another power, not simply the power to tolerate, well, in a sense, he showed the power to tolerate physical abuse, and then he showed the power to tolerate physical pleasure. When the prostitute visited Haridas Thakura, there are two versions. One is prostitute, the other one is Maya Devi herself. But to be offered sort of like the best there is in sex pleasure, the absolute best, and just to basically yawn and go on chanting Hare Krishna, that's Haridas Thakura. So it's very interesting because, as we know, the two great enemies of spiritual consciousness are attachment to pleasure and aversion to pain. And so Haridas Thakura showed he could tolerate any amount of physical abuse and any amount of material pleasure without becoming disturbed by it. So that's, how do they say, the whole enchilada, that's just, that is complete Krishna consciousness. That's complete Krishna consciousness. Because what else does this world offer but pain and pleasure? And what else does anyone do down here except seek pleasure and avoid pain? And so Haridas Thakura showed that he could easily tolerate, totally undisturbed, in the face of the most extreme pain and the most extreme pleasure. And that's, if you compare these two pastimes, that's really how they go together. So Haridas Thakura, and of course he converted the prostitute. She became a great devotee and built, just stayed there in a little kutir, which means cottage, and became a truly great Vaishnavi by his association. So, yeah, I mean, even Lord Chaitanya, when Haridas Thakura passed away, he danced with his body. I mean, Lord Chaitanya, who is Krishna, was inspired, greatly inspired by Haridas Thakura. And you could say, well, whatever Haridas did, it was just Krishna doing it anyway. But actually, no. Krishna gives free will to souls. We're not just all these little pious robots. We actually have free will. And so Haridas Thakura's greatness, of course, is Krishna's mercy. And in another sense, it's Haridas Thakura's greatness. And Lord Chaitanya, sincerely, wasn't just like, okay, my next choreographed pastime is I'll pretend like I'm. No, it was Lord Chaitanya exhibiting genuine appreciation. He really appreciated Haridas Thakura. He really, really appreciated him because, of course, Krishna is infinite and greater than everyone, but at the same time, a jiva soul, precisely because a jiva soul is, infinitesimal compared to Krishna, in that sense, a jiva's achievements are very impressive, precisely because Haridas is a jiva, and therefore the marginal potency of the Lord. And starting from that baseline, so to speak, you have Haridas Thakura becoming just a stunningly Krishna conscious soul who combines these qualities of greatness and humility, not often found together. As soon as we have the slightest inkling, as soon as we have the slightest suspicion that we've done something really good, our humility vanishes. Even though we just suspect that I may have done something really good, that's enough to get us going. So here you have Haridas Thakura, who was just glorious almost beyond description, and yet he's genuinely humble. So he's truly humble. And of course, his chanting, he's the Namacharya. Many devotees find it excruciating